Let's first begin by creating a file inside of the folder routes, and we call this file index.svelte. And this is where we will display the name of our store, all of our categories and products. So the first thing we'll need to do is write a script with a context module. This is just how Svelte does things, and you can read all about this in their documentation. But to follow along, let's go ahead and import the commerce file that we created in the previous video. And then following the SAPA conventions, what we'll need to do now is export an async function that is called preload. And this is used to get all of the data for the page we're viewing. And in this case, we want to get information about our merchant account. And if we look at the Commerce.js documentation, we can see the function we need is about. Then we'll also need to make a request to get all of our categories. So again, inside of the documentation, if we head on over to the categories part of the docs, we can see that there is a function called list. And this list, while it takes in some parameters we won't provide now, we will later, this just allows us to get all of our categories. So let's go ahead and make a request to Commerce.js to get all of our categories. And then we would now like to do the same for the products. So I'm wondering if products has the same function. And of course, yes, it does. It follows a convention as well. So here we have .list that also takes in some arguments that at the moment we don't need. And also each of these responses will return their categories and products inside of a data object. And this will be an array. So let's go ahead and destructure data from both responses and name them accordingly. Then all that's left to do is return to the page merchant, categories, and products. And this is what's available inside of our file. And we'll need to go ahead now and actually create some variables that can attach to these that are passed down from the preload function. So that's just simply by creating some variables here, merchant, categories, and product inside of a new script tag that is outside of the context module. And then all that's left to do is add the information to our page. So the first thing we want to show is the name of our business. And if we have a look at the API reference and have a look at an example response from Commerce.js, we can see the response here is business name. So we'll go ahead and render that to the page. Now it's quite good that we have our categories, so let's go ahead and render each of those in a list, and we will also create links to those pages. So inside of the each categories as block, we'll add list items for each of our categories. And we'll use a special rel preload tag here, and you can read all about that in the SAPA documentation. But as we begin to hover over here, this will prefetch the page, and it will feel like it is almost instantaneous because that content will begin to fetch as you hover over it or click it. Then we can see that we would like to link to the slug of our category, so that will be the page path. And then we'll go ahead and display the category name. Now we have categories, let's go ahead and render our products in the same way. So copying the list for categories, let's rename anywhere we have the word categories with products and where we are using category as product. But the one thing to remember here is that products, they don't have slugs. Instead, they have permalinks. And this is a custom link you can define for all of your products inside of Commerce.js. And we would obviously like to use that in the URL to create the path. So that's what we'll do. And then running npm run dev and heading over to localhost 3000, you'll see now we have our merchant business name, a list of our categories, and the products. And of course, if we click on one of these categories, we'll end up at a 404, and we'll create that next.